Well, notice freeya for Friday, the god, it's a Norse god. Let me just point out, the end of the name is Yah. Yah is, I don't know if I want to say Canaanite or Hebrew, but God, Yahweh, Yahavah, God, you see, Yah, is, stunned amazement at you, your, year, yet, yonder, yes, yeah. Let me just read to you, this is, a quick from Google. In Norse mythology, Freya, F-R-E-Y-R, also spelled F-R-E-Y, was the god of fertility. Now, we're thinking of Friday, aren't we? Day of preparation. It's life, you see, it's this quickening. So what is this? Peace and prosperity. It's the coming of the great Sabbath day, you see. On the sixth day he makes man God, doesn't he? I mean, I'm mixing religions here, but, pick it up. He was associated with good weather, sunshine, and bountiful harvests. And notice it's he. I thought it was she, but hold with it for a moment. He was also known as the Lord of Alfheim, the land of the elves. The elves! Goodness gracious. Freya was a member of the Vanir, a group of deities associated with with nature and magic. Life, you see. Nature, life. Remember, God is the Lord, the giver of life. In him was life. And, light of the world and so on. And was the son of the sea god, Njord, N-J-O-R-D. Well, we're talking about Northern Europe, aren't we? His sister was the goddess freeya, F-R-E-Y-J-A. Remember, there was no, if we think of the Hebrew, no j sound, it's y. Freya. So it looks like, for some reason or other it starts off male, but we're then really talking about the goddess Freya. And it's to do with life, fertility, of course, the female. It's got to be female, not male, really, isn't it, when you start to think in that sort of way. Well. Notice he was also associated with coming from, in some sense, the sea, and could travel across the sea in a sort of boat which he kept in his pocket, apparently, according to Google. And yes, the male god Freya, he won a beautiful goddess wife. And there's something to do with this boar, which is a sort of wild pig. Seems to be part of his story. And the whole thing is particularly associated with Sweden. Isn't it strange that, well, it's not so strange, but there are days of the week, and we got them something named after Norse gods. Some of them, like Wednesday, Woden's Day. Thursday seems to be the god Thor. And I know nothing about Norse mythology, but we're in England and we've got these names of our days. Why? Well, it might be something to do with the fact that we're Scythian, we're Norse, we're Viking, we're we're not the original people of England, if you like, the Britons, the ancient Britons. Celts or whatever you like to call them at some point, but each invader sweeping into the country pushed the inhabitants further north into the, Picts and Scots in Scotland, or to the Welsh hills, or even across to Ireland and the West Country. We're Viking in some measure, considerable measure, and it's in our language what we call the days of the week. The Hebrew didn't call them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. It's, Sunday's the first day of the week, then there's the second, the third, the fifth, and Friday, what we call Friday now, Freya's Day, is the sixth day in the Hebrew understanding of things. The preparation day, which is what we're thinking of with Freya's Day. Whatever astonishing history was, as we go back in time, it's meant that the world was far more mixed up and, if you like, a confusion of globality than the isolated, distinct and separate countries and cultures and communities that we imagine. The Silk Route is almost ancient. The days of the week are named after gods that, man in the streets no idea of. It's just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, But traces of it in our language, in what seems absolutely normal in our modern world. And we don't know why the names are there. And it comes from this complex past. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. All this of elves and Norse and so on. Remember, we're talking about the influence of Scythian-type peoples, the hordes of Central Asia, the horsemen, violent, warring gods that, people that make up Vikings, Saxons, Danes, Normans, which is Norsemen, you see, Nordic, Scandinavia. We think of those cold climates where, you have to fight the cold to survive. You've got to fight it and win or you're dead. It takes tremendous will. And this sort of abominable, invading, conquering Viking character is what's going to birth, ultimately, Western civilization. This materialism that we have today, this astonishing technology, is we're looking, when we think of Norse mythology and so on, we're looking at a history of a wild people that have to survive against the cold, the bitter cold, or you're dead. You know, when the Vikings, or when these peoples move anyway, whether it's Scythian or, yeah, I mean, the Scythian had caravans there. They're the forerunners of the gypsy horse, or probably some sort of beast. You know, we're talking about pulling a caravan. The house is carried to the next place that they move to, and they're being driven across Europe and Northern Europe and down into towards the Mediterranean. They're being driven by more hordes pushing them. You know, it's wave after wave of nomadic people pushing into Western Europe, Northern Europe, down into Western Europe. It's man, Friday, seizing life. Notice we mentioned the sun and nature. And what are elves, for goodness sake? Well, again, let's just see, what do we say about elves? In mythology and folklore, elves are supernatural beings, often depicted as human-like, Friday again, man, with magical abilities, life, come that you might have life, and a close connection to nature. The sun, nature, prosperity, plenty, you see, life. They appear in various forms, from benevolent helpers to mischievous tricksters. They're a sort of parody on man, aren't they? See what I mean? And are prominent in Germanic and Norse traditions. Now, when you get a person like Steiner, of course, Germanic, German, lecturing in the 1920s, and founder of Rudolf Steiner schools, Waldorf schools, and his astonishing philosophy, writings, lectures. Well, we're talking about, the Norse people again. We're talking about, if you like, almost ancient Scythians. And if we're talking about Scythian, remember, we're talking about Persian, that area of east, if you like, of Euphrates and Tigris, isn't it? Go further and to the east, the nomadic people of the steppes of Central Asia. They're closely allied and associated with that people, that area. That's who they are. And so we find even our days of the week are in a sense something to do with ancient Babylon, the way we've named them. This is pre-Hebrew. This is, even in the Hebrew story, Abraham's from Ur of the Chaldees, which is Babylon, you see, that area, what we did call or think of as Persia. Notice the associations comes out of the sea. Our notions that man developed from the sea creatures to the land creatures, and of course the Christian story is that too. Remember, by Friday, God's already made, I think it's on Thursday, the animals, the fish, or at least the fish in the sea, not the animals so much. And Friday makes the animals and man. And, we're building up to heaven, aren't we? Because, I mean, you're going to be as the angels of God in heaven. A fantastic being, not just mortal man wandering around on Friday. I say just, he's got life, my goodness. You know, he can come to know God. Wow. His potential's fantastic then, isn't it? As God. Wonderful. And bear in mind too, associated with the sun. Sun is the giver of life, isn't it, in a very practical, nature type way. And, you know, my obsession with you should sunbathe, I don't mean suffer melanoma, I mean, but you should have sunlight. We're not good. You try putting a plant in the dark and see what happens to it. It dies. You need sunshine, you need daylight, you need on the eyes, the immune system, the health and vitality. The plants need sunshine. The amazing thing about the productivity of the land in a place like, say, New Zealand compared to England is something to do with the rain, more moisture, double sort of the UK average sort of thing, and much more sun. Sunlight brings life. And we've got this freeya, who's associated with nature and the sun, and elves. What are these elves? They're benevolent or mischievous. They're a bit like man, aren't they? Childish man. Friday, early man. And if you think of it, our Norse ancestors, Vikings, Saints and Normans and so on, if we're thinking of peoples of Western Europe, now that are in Western Europe, they were from these very troublesome Vikings, I mean, a bit more than mischievous, goodness gracious. But they moved as a people. And, you know, when we're talking about the sea people that invaded ancient times, the eastern part of the Mediterranean, attacking even Egypt and so on. In fact, Egypt seemed to be the only place that didn't get completely swamped. But they had to tolerate them in the delta of the Nile. And these people were not just Viking-like invaders. They had their families with them in their ships and so on. They were a people on the move. It's this nomadic, dare I say again, Scythian type ancestry, pushing. And if you look at, you know, the people of Western Europe, they've been the same ever since. Always at war, if not with one another, the rest of the world. Always pushing into, you know, the great age of building empires and so on. Again, they're the cursed invader, aren't they? Man is troublesome as a child in civilization. Frightening. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Did you get that? Early man, Friday, Gulliver's Travels. Who was his friend on the island? Gulliver's friend. Man Friday. You don't want to ignore our stories, you know. There's all sorts of things in our quotes, mythology, stories, scriptures, legends. It's got associations that, lead you to some sort of enlightenment about the spirituality of our domain here. and our potential. It's written everywhere. I mean, even our modern sci-fi stuff is fantastic. And not just subconsciously, but very consciously written to be such. It's very deliberate, as deliberate as far as I can see as whoever wrote something like John's Gospel. It's very purposeful and wide awake as to what associations and Gnostic understanding is to be. Gnostic, Nordic, wow. Negation, it starts with a negation. Nordic. They're Nordic people. And the Christians were Gnostic philosophers, if you like. Yes, it's a negation of what's gone before. It's to say, no, it's something deeper than this. It's not some literalism. It's not just some fairy story. It has a hidden purpose and potential. And it's hidden because it would probably have been wiped out, hated otherwise, and just rejected. So it's hidden. It's hidden in fairy stories. And where's it got to affect most effectively? On the child, on youth. That's where you start your revolution. It's not on old people. The old generation die out for the revolution to really take hold. It's the new generation, the ones that are negating the old, that bring change. You know, churches don't change. They don't shift from being traditional to charismatic. The old folk die off, and it's the kids, or not even the kids, new people that come in, converts that are on fire and full of the Spirit, and give a totally new, you get Pentecostalism instead of simply non-conformity. You got non-conformity instead of conforming Protestant. They protest, but this is actually non-conforming protesters. And of course the Protestant movement was, again, it was a contrary. It was protesting against conformity originally of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church wasn't anything like so inclusive as wholesomely as you'd like to say. What it meant was swamping and killing everybody that wasn't. We wiped out the Gnostic Christian, the true Christian, the original Christian church. And it took quite a long time and a much heavier persecution than ever. The Roman Church suffered. The persecution of literalist Christians only summed up to about 5 years in total. But the persecution of the Gnostic Christian went on for 400 or 500 years. Routing them out of wherever they tried to escape to and set up. As far away from Rome as possible. Come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. He's the Son of Man in the Christian understanding of things, Jesus. He's Friday. He's trouble. He's benevolent and he's mischievous. He's an elf. Ah, no, surely you're being just... No. He's man. He's man. He's trouble to the existing system. He's change. Change is invasion. It's invasion upon what I have at present. It's Viking. It's Scythian. It's nomadic. It's untamed. It's a destruction of what is in civilization, and it brings something else. You know, our modern civilization is not civilized. We war on a scale that makes a Viking look like a child. You know, our destruction and killing is something that can wipe out the whole planet now. We are more terrifying than any Viking or Scythian horde. This is the fearful thing from the angel's point of view. You're going to create man. Yes, with fantastic potential, but fantastic potential to do harm on a scale that's unimaginable and horrific. In his freedom, or what he thinks of as his freedom anyway. Gone on too long, it's 26 minutes now. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.